The idea of students' leadership program emanates from the recognition of the cardinal role that student activism has placed in the fight against apartheid. The unique role they play has a continuing influence on policies in the educational and governmental arenas at varying levels. It is important to note that student leaders often graduated from student politics to key positions in politics and business. The culture of student activism continues in a post-apartheid era. There is a need to assist current and emerging student leadership to be empowered to play a meaningful role in a changing political environment. In South Africa, the apartheid system created and maintained a racially divided system of education through various legislation and political designs meant to deny black students access to skills. Against this background, a project for student leadership development was initiated with the following objectives: training, resourcing student organizations, and research. Training. The following areas that are to be focused on: strategic planning, conflict resolution, and organizational development. Resourcing students' organizations. The project was started with 3 national student organizations, which historically have been aligned to the broad liberation movement in the country, namely PASO, Pan-Africanist Student Organization, the students' wing of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania; SASCO, South African Students' Congress, aligned to the African National Congress; and AZASCO, Azania Student Convention, a formation of the Azania People's Organization. To ensure a more broadly based participation, the Federation of Technikon Student Representative Councils and the Federation of University Student Representative Councils were included. Since its inception, the project has allocated much-needed funds to these student formations for administrative and organizing purposes. The history and role student movement in South Africa is an under-researched area. It is therefore important to have the anti-apartheid struggle documented. To do this, the following 2 methods are suggested: ethnographic or participatory video documentation to portray the legacy and continuing efforts of the student movement in South Africa; commissioning research to relevant individuals and institutions on key topics relating to student movement. After the support of the student organizations had been secured, a planning committee was set up to direct the project. 2 former student leaders, Ernest Kawusa and Terence Chauke, were instrumental in getting this momentous task off the ground. Dr. Ron Carter, the Dean of Students at the University of Witwatersrand, also threw his weight behind the idea. His office served as the nerve center for coordinating the preliminary activities of the project. The Embassy of the United States of America in Pretoria was approached by the Planning Committee and the Cultural Affairs Officer, Ms. Rosemary Crockett, to lend support to the initiative. She assisted greatly in developing linkage with the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee to provide technical assistance and training in terms of the outlined project objectives. First stage of training. A team of trainers from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee arrived in South Africa partly to familiarize themselves with the state of tertiary education in our country, and also to conduct the first stage of training at the Alpha Training Center in Broederstroom in March 1995. It was also at this training session where a decision was made to take a group of 12 student leaders for further training to the USA and to expose them to the country's system of higher education.
Is different today than the world you left when you left your homes and your universities to come here yesterday. That is how dramatically change is taking place. And we've also heard that you've been involved in strategic planning and you've been involved in broad transformation planning, and we heard from the speaker yesterday that even as we move to engage in change, that we have to be so careful about symbols and language. We heard from one of the members of our group last night that we look at decision making and suddenly it is having to be done collectively, and how do we manage that, etc. What we are struggling with in all of that is the fact that the world has, we are the generation, you are the generation. I'm keeping my roster of your names because I suspect that things will be going on globally within the world where I'm going to see your names and I'm going to say, I know this person who is now a part of national structures and giving leadership to this nation and a part of international structures. And before I die, I might meet again in global meetings where you and I will be together. And so we look at how do we deal with the world that we are operating. The responsible change agent has to get in touch with this. Even though I am of the people, even though we're talking about collective decision making, why am I in this? Where are when we look at the order and pattern, where are you relative to those patterns? Where are you operating? Where do you want to be? Now, there's no African proverb, and I don't know where from the mother continent this proverb comes from, but the proverb is that wisdom is in knowing who I am, where I am, and what time it is.
The partnership of university and Technicon principals as essential role players in the education was also considered crucial to the success of the project. In pursuance of this ideal, conference was convened in April 1995 at the Holiday Garden Court in Johannesburg to solicit their support and endorsement for establishing a Center for Students' Leadership and Development. This conference also served as a platform for the official public for announcement for the final preparations for the summer training in the United States. South African student delegation arrived in Milwaukee on June 24, 1995. The training program in the United States was designed by the students' delegation from South Africa and in conjunction with University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee team of trainers. This ensured that the essential aspect of trainee input was incorporated in all modules. The training program was designed with the objective to empower participants and trainees with needed skill to train their fellow comrades once they retired to South Africa. The overall goal was to train student leaders to enhance their future contributions to the transformation of South African tertiary educational institutions, finding common ground and developing a collective vision. Before the training program could be commenced with, it was crucial that rapport was established between the trainers and the differing student organizations in South Africa. Once this rapport was established, it served a basis for student leaders to find common ground on issues of mutual concern. Building on this foundation, the students worked to develop a collective vision on how to constructively impact on the highly contested area of tertiary education transformation and the desire to de-escalate conflict around it. The fact that the program included parallel training sessions with students and institutional administrators, as it enabled both groups to be frank about the conflict that characterizes the tertiary education transformation in South Africa. Strategic planning means doing an organizational assessment to base a plan of action to reach short, medium, or long-term objectives. Under this area, students received training on a number of methods and techniques that could be employed for strategic planning, one of which is future search.
When we look at the search model, we find a panacea, but is that it brings people together to achieve breakthrough innovation, empowerment,
TV's coming. This is what happens in technology.
Together, constituencies. This technology refers to it as domains, as some of you may already know. You bring them together to really look at what is the future that you want to share. So we see government, industry, opposing interests, organizations, networks, and communities all a part of this process. Be giving leadership to this kind of planning in your own future. I also see you as those persons who will be developed like the Alpha Center that was wonderful for that. But before that happens, representatives of all of the constituencies have to be present in the pre-planning phase. And they begin to talk about what will be the primary task of the search conference. Secondly, they need to know the kinds of people needed to do it. In transformational change, the important thing is to get everybody in the room who has a vested interest, any interest at all, in the survival of the institution or the community or the nation, depending upon, number A, what that work task is. The work task then talks about which domains or constituencies need to be present. Marvin says that when you deal with a search conference, it is analogous to 38 blind people in a room, each holding one piece of a large elephant. The issue is to find out that the elephant is in the room. So here you want to know who's here, who's not here, who do we need to be sure in the pre-planning phase to draw in. Now, this happened a lot, I think, with your committee when you were beginning to talk about education and the 3 prior meetings. Who is not here that needs to be here? The second thing that occurs in pre-planning is the kind of language that will be used to describe what we're talking about. If it's tertiary education, the kind of language that is appropriate to that. If it has to do with socioeconomic stuff, the kind of language that is appropriate to describe. Now that we've done that, and we feel that we've done a good job, we're now at the Alpha Center. And at the Alpha Center to try to bring everybody on board. So leadership for 3 search conferences, and they have varied from 65 people to 300 people. 300 people is not what's recommended. Marvin says that if you got that larger group, you ought to be doing them concurrently in separate places, dividing that size group. He recommends somewhere between 65 and 85. But when you get all of those people who have not talked to each other before in the room, it's important to then describe to people carefully what the search conference technology is all about. And so phase 2 is bringing people on board. And I have on this side small groups. The representatives are mixed. You're not dealing with everybody is a part of the National Party or everybody is a part of the ANC. You've got them all mixed up together. What people then do is discuss what the past has been in this critical situation. Here, what is very interesting, and I like to use another little visual that talks about what's happening to us in a lot of transformational change. Just let me interrupt this for a moment. A culture where there has been some very, very painful, repressive, oppressive elements of the culture present. And collaboration only comes to either avert catastrophe or to engage opportunity, or a context of the University of the North, or in the context of any of the educational institutions. The participants talk about what's happened in the last 20 years to me, Cynthia. So the newsprint is divided by self, society, educational institution. It is the capacity of giving voice to the history that's in the room. So you don't have to force that data into what is going on. It is a capacity to talk about the critical events and trends that occurred. Here, what we are trying to do is to arrive at the common ground area. They have managers, they have representation from all of the personnel within the organization, and within your stakeholder group, you're identifying what you are not proud of and you want to leave behind, and what you are proud of and want to take into the future. If there's one thing that our experience has been, as African people in America, it is that we didn't do a good job of deciding what we wanted to leave behind and what we wanted to carry forward. We just rushed forward. And in many cases, reflecting, we left behind some of the things we should have brought with us. In transformation planning, I can remember when I used to just do corporate planning. You would find that corporate planning could be a planning horizon of 10 years. You know, in private industry, it might be 20 years in planning. In the environment that we live in today, Marvin says that change is unrelenting, that change is merciless, that things are changing more quickly than we individually have the capacity to get a hold of and influence. So that under those circumstances, in search, they talk about 3 to 7 years because things are changing so quickly. And so we talk about shared vision or sharing scenarios for the future. Now we're no longer in stakeholder groups, we're back in mixed groups. It's action planning. Now the piece that you received yesterday gives us a wonderful model for the action planning. That's when we move from the global to specifically my university, X-department within the university, X-school within the university. We begin to look at what are the major steps that need to be taken, by what processes will these occur, who has primary responsibility, and when you look at Form C, and we are going to try to work on Form C the 11th when we come back to this. But much of this work, much of the action planning work is done back home. There's just not enough time, and one becomes very frustrated to try to make quality action planning occur in the search environment. The most you want to do is to understand what are the critical directions we want to take from this vision, and what are the priorities in that. So today we are going to be trying to do some of the visioning and identifying priorities, and then have you discuss how that felt, what went well, what are the challenges in it. If the condition meets these 3 areas, that a search conference is in order. When you need to include a broad spectrum of viewpoints, there is no way to do the level of nation building that is going on right now except 38 people be in the room. So we are looking at the inclusion of every stakeholder regardless of their perception. And you want to include in this even external stakeholders. For example, if you're dealing with your educational institution, an external stakeholder might be industries that respond to particular schools in your educational institution. You want them there. In other words, you are preparing men and women to go into those industries or institutions. They would represent an external stakeholder. You would want representatives there. Another example of an external domain or external stakeholders might be primary educators, people who are preparing men and women to come to the educational institution. You don't want representatives there. Those that you know typically feed into your educational institution. So, number one, if you need a broad spectrum of viewpoints, a search conference is in order. Number two, it is an open systems exploration. You are not limited to just looking in your own educational institution. So you are looking at the exploration of trends within and between the university, the community, the sector or industry, and what's going on in the world. So if you are not clear, these 3 conditions if what you're trying to do, this technology you find would be useful, I'll just take a brief moment.
The thrust of this technique is to foster creative problem solving by eliminating the problem and imagining solutions, thereby generating many options to pick and choose from. For this technique to be effective, all parties involved should engage in forceful analysis of their interests in an environment that is free of suspicion and mistrust. For the students' purposes, strategic planning training focused on honoring the skills of developing new and future-bound paradigms through the envisioning the nature and direction which the transformation debate should follow. The overarching goal is to bring about a new tertiary education system that will be relevant to our socio-economic and political conditions. Conflict resolution is defined as a process to bring about an agreement between parties in dispute. Negotiation, mediation, and arbitration are considered dispute resolution mechanisms. This is a process through which parties try by communal communications to reach an implementable agreement on the conflicting issue. Negotiation is therefore a form of bargaining and is usually an initial technique for resolving disputes. At some stages, efforts to negotiate may deadlock. This brings the negotiation process to a halt. The breakdown of the negotiations process introduces the need to utilize mediation or arbitration. Mediation is the process in which a neutral party assists the disputants talk to resolve their differences. The mediator's role is to facilitate the process. However, it should be noted that a mediator does not have decision-making powers. Unlike the mediation process, in which no decision is made by the third party, in arbitration, the third party assists the disputants in sorting out their problem by deciding what must be done. The arbitrator's decision is final and binding.
There are two kind of polar approaches to dealing with conflict. One is soft positioning, and the other one is hard. And I got a sense from hearing some of your conflicts and the way that you've dealt with them that not too many people have relied on the soft side, but more on the having to fight for rights, having to negotiate to get issues addressed. You can see that in the soft strategy, participants are friends, and the goal is to try to keep things nice, try not to let conflicts arise, not to have disruption and problems in communication, to try not to alienate the other side. The weakness of that is that if I'm conceding and conceding and conceding and hoping that out of the goodness of your heart you'll reciprocate my actions, and you don't because you've got your criteria and you're going to take care of your interests and your constituents, then I can feel bitter or resentful.
In most situations, the conflict resolution techniques are used in the sequence as outlined above. However, the organization's constitutions specifically stipulate the techniques that should be used in times of conflict. Organizational development. Broadly speaking, organizational development refers to a set of activities aimed at developing the organization's capacity to achieve its goals.
As we set up a meeting, we generally have a task. We generally have an issue that we have to deal with, a problem that we have to solve. The outcome of the meeting is different from the task. The outcome is what we want to come away with, what we hope to accomplish. In every meeting, we cannot completely solve a problem. There are times in which we have to work on a problem in stages. And as an effective leader conducting a meeting, it is your job to make those determinations. It is always best for most meetings to make your decisions as a leader in consultation with others, so that it's better if more people are thinking about the task and the possible outcomes than just one person. I'd like to ask you this blank question. Why do you think it's important, as you go back to your respective universities and technikons, to inform people about running an effective meeting? What reasons might you come up with? As people pose it to you, why should I come to your meeting on? Why should I come to your workshop on?
Organizational development involves developing organizational skills for members and officials alike, establishing efficient administrative infrastructure, setting up control systems, procedures, planning and performance evaluation mechanisms, financial management and fundraising skills, budgeting and proposal writing skills, understanding portfolio roles, time management, strategic planning for the organization, planning, organizing and conducting productive meetings and conferences.
You are directors of or presidents of your SRCs on your campuses, but you may also belong to other student organizations. And I don't know how many of your other student organizations have monies to administer or need monies from time to time, but you need to be able to put together some type of budget in order to be able to account for those dollars, spend those dollars. So I think I'll start off with proposal writing or grant writing. It's different people call it different things, but basically, even for the grant, you have to write a proposal. What you're doing is you're putting together a statement asking for funding for a project, a topic, a piece of equipment, a program, something along those lines. So one of the first things you need to do is establish what is the need that you have. What is it you want to do? Do you need a piece of equipment? I mean, do you need to fund a program on your campuses? Do you want to fund a speaker? Do you want to fund, whatever it is, you need to put together an idea about what you want to accomplish. Why do you want to do this? What are your goals for doing this? What kind of outcome do you anticipate having when you do this program? That's where oftentimes many organizations fail, is because they don't put together a plan as far as how they want to do something. They don't know how much it's going to cost them to do what they want to do. And when you go to your administration and say, give me money to do this, you need to be able to say, or at least have a very good idea how much money you're talking about. Because that's what they're concerned about, is how much is this going to cost me? So when you come in to me and say, we want to do this program on our campus, because there's their first question is going to be, why? Why do you want to do this? You need to be able to respond and say, because there's a need for this on our campus. Okay? Or you need to be able to say, I want to do this because if we do this, we can reduce the number of students who fail this course. We can, whatever outcome you want. You need to have either an answer to the why question, or to be able to explain what you want to accomplish with this funding that you're asking for in your proposal. The proposal is basically a written plan of action. Okay. How am I going to do this? A proposal also is a request for something. In many cases, or most cases, it's for money. A proposal also is a promise. It's a promise from you. You're saying, if you give me this money, I will do this with it. Especially when you get to at the federal, national level, where you're actually signing contracts. You need to be able to, if you ever get to that point, you're promising to deliver something. If you don't deliver, then there's questions that you have to answer. Why come you didn't do this? Why come, what happened? But it's a promise that if you give me this money, this is what's going to happen. A proposal is also your opportunity to persuade the funder. You want to persuade the funder to give you the money. Because if I'm a foundation, and each and every one of you submit a proposal to me, I've got 11 proposals. Okay? Why do I fund yours and not hers? Okay? In your proposal, you have to persuade me to fund yours. So basically, it's your opportunity to persuade the funder that give my organization the money, because we're the best.
Judging from the aforementioned areas, there can be no doubt that organizational development is an essential component of any leadership development program. Anyone who is going to be involved in an organization such as business, government, social movements, and non-governmental or community-based organizations, etc., will find organizational development extremely useful. There's basically nowhere you cannot apply organizational development techniques such as efficient time management as long as you are working with people. Historically, student leaders did not have the opportunity to be imparted with organizational skills. Most of us gain such skills and struggle through a painful process of trial and error, sometimes with very costly consequences for organizations and individual student leaders. With the transition to democracy and the changes for broader social transformation, transforming our own organizations into efficient structures capable of meeting the conjunctural need of their membership is a do-or-die matter. As student leaders who believe that organization is the key to building a peaceful, economically just, and democratic society, organizational development is an indispensable tool of transformation. Time has passed wherein the Student Representative Council, student organizations, clubs and societies will entrust their fate into the hands of people who will take half of the term of office trying to learn how to do a job instead of an outright delivery of service to students. Training is a very necessary component of practical acquisition of leadership skills. Lastly, training in fundraising skills and project proposal writing will help student leaders in sustaining their organization's resource capacity and efficient utilization of scarce resources. We can say with no slightest doubt that an organization which cannot take organizational development seriously can hardly take itself seriously. Apart from the classroom-based training that student leaders received, they were also given an opportunity to explore on their own and to interact with the peers from other universities and colleges in the United States of America. A group tour of the city of Atlanta, Georgia, enabled students to visit some old reputable institutions of higher learning in the area. It is in the city of Atlanta where you will find what is called the Atlanta University Center, or the AUC. The AUC is unique as it is within a small radius about 4 universities and colleges virtually interlocked and sharing facilities. Visits to Morris Brown College, Spelman College, Clark Atlanta University, and Morehouse College proved to be invaluable. The students engaged in enlightening exchanges with their American counterparts on matters of governance, organizational structures for student organizations, and supportive services. Also included were other social, cultural, and educational concerns.
It sounds idealistic that we as students sit on representatives committees, but you're right. One representative to 7 people who belong to that particular issue, we don't count. My vote doesn't count. I mean, I sit on the board of trustees, and recently I voted, and though for the record it showed that the students were against it, it still passes. Do you understand? But what that does is it lets us, the student, know what passed. That's the difference between us knowing what we need to fight for at the ground level and what we don't. I might not be able to make a big impact in the meeting, but I know what's going on and I can take it back to the executive board and make an impact some other way. But if you're not allowed in the meeting and if you're not allowed to know what's going on to some extent, then you can't even begin to make an impact because you don't know. As far as the board though, the representation I do think is fair is that the president is the only person, the president of the school, not me, is the only administrator that sits on the board. So Dr. Downs, these other administrators, they don't sit on the board. So for administrator to student, there's only 1 representative. For faculty, there's only 1 or 2 representatives. For alumni, there's only 1 or 2. Now you do get people in there, my concern, that are business people at large, or, then you get the bishop, who is the person over the AME church, who might not have the same interests as far as the students, the administration, or the faculty is concerned. So that's when, you come and you talk and you discuss. But don't let it seem so great that we sit on these committees and we have these big impacts at the actual meeting, within the actual committee, because we're still treated like, okay, you're just talking, we hear you, but okay, let's take a vote on this, and it's still a pass. But in return, I can go back to my executive board and go, look, I sat on the financing committee, they want to raise this, they want to raise that, I have a problem with it, what are we going to do? Then we can go back to the student body and say, look, the president knows this is what they're going to do, what do you guys want to do? Now, if they want to go and stand around the administration building and sing We Shall Overcome, then that's what, you know what I'm saying, that's how we have to act. And I think the thing that allows us by sitting on the committee, us as leaders have to decide what's the best way to deal with it. Because if you hear it like, oh, I hear they're going to raise tuition, but nobody sat on the committee and knows, you can start more fire than someone who was actually sitting there, and I can say, no, that's not what's going to happen. The only thing that's happening is there's going to be a slight increase so that the teachers can get paid more. You see, it keeps the peace. But if you just heard a rumor, oh, they're going to raise our this, they're going to do this, the students will get upset and they'll want to, they'll want to lash out. And so I think that's the best thing about us sitting on these boards. We don't have an impact there. But I'm saying, maybe in your particular situation, I mean, every particular situation is whatever. What I'm saying is, at our school, because we know what's going on firsthand, not secondhand, not thirdhand, not rumor, but because I actually sit there and heard it and actually saw the real documentation myself, then I know what I'm taking to the student body, and I know they know what they're fighting for.
Atlanta is also an important cultural and tourist city, mainly due to its historical connection with the civil rights movement of the 1960s. One of the movement's exponents, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was born and buried in the city. His tombstone is regarded as a national monument. Back in South Africa, numerous meetings have been held with institutional, business, and government leaders for the founding of a center that will provide continual support to student leaders and their organizations. It intended that such a center should represent a legacy of the student movement in South Africa. It will also operate as a permanent resource for emerging student leaders. Capacity building for student organizations will be facilitated through training, resourcing, and research. A call is extended to all students and stakeholders in education to join hands with us as we traverse this long and bumpy road for our country's reconstruction and development. We have no doubt that together we will reach the milestone for the sake of the students who will come after us, but more importantly for the transformation of our tertiary education as a national resource.
I think one of the things that we have come to learn here, because we are involved in the process of transforming education in our country, is to come and see in what way are the positive things about the system of higher education in America. Although the distinction here is that it's the federal as opposed to the unitary state. There are a lot of things that we have come across here which I don't think they will apply to our country. For example, the way the governor or the state plays a role in terms of appointing the board of regents or council members. And the other thing, I think, it's in terms of the actual skills about running mass organizations or transformation, there are a lot of things that we have learned. For example, I think we will be better people in dealing with the transformation in our own institutions and in the country as a whole. Just the art of negotiation, which is a very important thing, even if we are involved in mass transit. The art of negotiation around identifying issues. How do we get to arrive at our own objectives? The whole question around project writing, which is very important for organizations like ourselves. The whole question about video documentation, which is very important, even beyond organizations, even at a family level, just to keep the documentation, historical documentation, is very important. The whole question of strategic planning, that even beyond, or even when you go into a workplace, those are some of the important skills that I think they make us better leaders.
When I came here to the United States, the purpose was to come and observe the ways and means of how American people, amongst other countries, do things in relation to democratization of processes, transformation of institutions and all kinds of things. And on that level, generally, I think we've achieved what we came here for. We have observed, we have learned from the American people, and that is basically what we are going to take back home with us and impart that to our situation back home. And in the process of us imparting that, we're going to make sure that, amongst other things, and the basis is that we implement those, looking at the material conditions existing back home, so that when they suit our conditions at home, then we'll implement them as they are. However, if they don't suit our conditions back home, we have to either amend them, or we have to say we don't accept this because it doesn't suit our situation back home.
There are some innovations that needs to be brought into the program, and the program should expand as well. It should not be confined to leaders. It should take into account that there is a lot of grassroots training that needs to be done to ensure that the conflict resolution method, that is the main feature of the project, is actually translated into a practice. It moves beyond the realm of a theory.
The question of a united effort by student leaders is a very important one. Student organizations in South Africa have operated differently and have championed and pioneered various opinions and activities and programs. However, unity has been a striving effort. I think in the quest for unity, we now have groundwork. We have brought student leaders for the very first time out of the country in the confines of a program which orientate them to that goal of unity. I think we must just continue from that and facilitate a more organized program to bring our students together. Transformation in our country, it's a very important process, and students are central in that. And if we don't get our acts together, no one will do, and the process will die down. We must get ourselves together, irrespective of opinion. The goal is the transformation of our country and our institutions, and the education system in particular. So to me, it's very important that this process does not die down. It continues, it gets vigor and oomph, and that it be a real process.
The trip in itself, traveling and meeting new people, is exposure and obviously contribute to the development of the self and the person. And I think that the trip and the training has been very useful. I found the future search, the productive group work, and just negotiating, adapting to new negotiating skills and learning what those theories are all about. That I found extremely productive and definitely beneficial. Yeah.
Would you then go back and implement some of the skills that we've gained?
Definitely, I think that it's one of the much needed areas. It fulfills one of the, it could assist us in dealing and grappling with some of the particular problems that we are faced with there. And yeah, it would, I would be able to implement it, I think, within how I relate to people as well as in the organization, in an organizational sense.
The capacity building, particularly for the youth that are in the leadership in our country, either at the student level or at a political organization level, it is very much important. And having said that, this capacity building basically it addresses issues that are at stake at home. You know, there are a number of issues that need to be resolved at home, and those issues need people that are well versatile in terms of how to approach these issues. I think that this capacity building was very much important.
I believe that the youth have been empowered to put the matters on the table, and there on the table is where they can resolve their conflict.
Yeah, it should carry on. I think everyone who has all the resources to support it, both financially and in terms of human resource, should ensure that we support this program to continue, so that at least our people can, a vast number of our people can learn out of this project. Because I don't think that a team of about 11 students can be in a position to teach the entire youth of our country of these new developments. But we'll try to expand our tentacles, but nonetheless, more people should be trained in this project. I think so.
Well, we, in our team, we had people coming from different student organizations. Would you help me, would you say maybe staying together has helped in shaping a common vision, maybe of transformation of a student?
That's a very good question, I still remember in one of our sessions where in our group, we highlighted that as a factor. We said, this particular project has come up with a challenge to the presidents, of the various student organizations, political student organizations, PASO, SASCO, and ASASCO. Because whatever we were discussing there, we had common goals, all of us, and we couldn't even locate any ideological differences in the whole entire pursuit of the program. That's where we challenged them, and I still remember I wrote at the end of that chart, this is a challenge of the century. Yeah, because that's what, people have to be realistic now. We need to develop the country.
More especially when it comes to video documentation. I think that is one of the most important things that I've learned here in the United States. And I think it's one of the things that we need to put more emphasis when it comes to training, You try to train people on terms of video documentation. But at the same time, there are really some certain skills that are really important. Because we are in the process of transforming our institutions and general education system, I think things like strategic planning, things like negotiations and conflict management are some of the skills that we need to really emphasize on. And I really enjoy that I've been part of the training project that has been here in the United States. And just to see, United States people and how they live.